one of the followers or subscribers of Jamal's channel, make sure you come over here and when you get a chance and subscribe to mine. And of course, if you're a subscriber to my channel, make sure you go over to Jamal. He has a great show. It's every Monday through Friday. It's from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Lots of good guests. He has all of them. He's got Ted Rawl. He's got Mark Sloboda. He's got Scott Ritter, you name it, all the good ones, Kate, you know. So you'll really enjoy it. And he gets the morning started off right. All right, Jamal. And by the way, also, if you can, follow me on Rockfin. Follow me also on Rumble, and you can see everything scrolling across the bottom in case you are able to, contribute. All right, let's get going. Jamal, let's start. You were just mentioning something about the latest blurb from Trump. You know, it kills me. Let me just say this. Like every day, it seems like at some point, either there's like a social or some kind of something, you know, brain fart comes out of Trump's ears and people go, oh my God, did you hear what Trump said? And they all go bananas. And you and I have been talking about this for like the last couple months, saying, you can't go by what Trump says. You can't jump around like a cat on a hot tin roof every time he says something, because like 24 hours later, it's like, oh, well, I guess he didn't mean that. Your thoughts on the latest Trump, what do we call them? Trump blurbs? We'll call it a trurb.
Yeah, it's so Trump put out a brain fart. My mom hit me up. She was like, boo, did you hear Trump's comments? And I said, what did Trump say? And I saw he had said this earlier, but effectively what it boils down to is Trump says something to the effect of, well, golly gee, Russia has been beating the stuffing out of Ukraine. And if Russia keeps this up, I am going to have to pass massive sanctions on banking. And it was something else that he said he was going to do. If they don't come to the negotiation for some kind of ceasefire. Okay, now this is absurd on its face on so many levels. For one, I don't believe for a moment that Donald Trump just woke up today and says, oh my God, look at this. Russia is beating the stuffing out of Ukraine. I don't buy that to save my life. Also, as I pointed out to her, Trump has done this two-step over the course of, oh God, with North Korea, where he's screaming about Rocket Man, then turns around and, you know, shakes the man's hand. When he is screaming about Hamas, where he's saying, I'm going to destroy and kill everybody in Gaza, while simultaneously talking back channel with Hamas. I suspect that Trump doesn't want to look weak on this issue. And he's already taken a certain amount of political risk by reaching out to Russia in the way that he has. He's changed the language. He's changed the way that he talks about the history of it. Like all of those things have fundamentally changed. And he just took, you know, the opportunity to put the screws to Zelensky by effectively cutting weapons, cutting intelligence, cutting all of these things. So, you know, I would imagine this is the other side of that, where he turns around and, oh, but I'm also still tough on Russia. Here, see, look at me, shake my fist at Russia, while simultaneously having meetings with Ukraine. I guess I look at it as a two-step. I mean, I care more about what Trump does. And up to this point, the things that he has done has been moving inexorably in a particular direction of, I'm trying to end this war. And so a random comment that seems to saber rattle, and every random blue moon he saber rattles anyway, not shocked, not blown away by it. I care more about action. And right now, I haven't seen anything where he's moving against the grain, if that makes sense. But give me your thoughts.
You know, I'm with you. I noticed more and more of the, you know, YouTube commenters, people in alternative media out there are starting to take the same position. You know, it's like at first it was like every time Trump saw something, there'd be like 50 YouTube, so it was like going online immediately. Well, here's the latest, you know, from Trump. This indicates so and so, and then like 8 hours later, they'd have to go back on and like, well, you know, perhaps he's going in another, I don't know. And now I think people have been forced to kind of wait. You know what I mean? Because you make yourself look like a fool if every time Trump, you know, you jump up and down and say, well, this indicates that, and then only to find out it doesn't. A perfect example is, so Trump's like, yes, we might have to tighten the screws, and his Treasury guy. Now, a couple of days ago, we hear this. Trump has ordered the people at the Treasury and somewhere else to start looking into what Russian sanctions are, and how they may be released and things of that nature. Right now, when I hear that, that's not a true social post of something out of anger or emotion, or just trying to disorient people, because he does that. He like hits you to try to disorient you, and while he's doing something else, right? He's jostling. You ever heard of that term?
What is it called?
He jostles people. Here's what it is. During I know that from it's actually a legal term. So during I used to teach all this law enforcement stuff, right? And during the 1904 or something World's Fair, what the New York City police did, somewhere around that time, what they discovered was there were pickpockets, and it was a pair of people, and one guy was the jostler. He'd hit you, boom, and bump you. That whoa, and then this guy picks your pocket, right? Even when they saw him do it, they could arrest the pickpocket, but they couldn't arrest the guy because there's no law against bumping into someone. Even though neither was accomplice, there was no actual law to charge him with, right? So they went to the legislature, and they wrote this law called jostling. So the person that bumped into somebody, the setup guy for the pickpocket, you can now charge him. And that's a term that came into amongst the police and other people. And then throughout New York, it became jostling somebody, the setup guy, the guy who disorient you so somebody else can do something, or even so they can do something, right? That's what Trump does. He jostles people. He disorients you. He bumps you a little bit with something crazy. And while you're all focused over there, he does the opposite, or he does something different, right? So example, earlier in the week, you remember a lot of people were reading, there's Trump's going to say, he's ordered someone to look into the sanctions. Now that's an action that he's taken. People look at that and they're like, based on that action, he's thinking about letting go of sanctions. It's clear that's an action, right? Now, the next thing we get either this morning or yesterday is Trump saying I might have to tighten sanctions down on Russia. Well, that's just nothing. That's just him running off his mouth, because the action he has taken is to order people to start looking physically, legally, how they would relax the sanctions. So he said he's trending in the direction of relaxing the sanctions, and he makes a little something to throw us off balance or whatever. Okay. Now, I might have to tighten the screws on Russia, right? Here's an article. We're out of here if Ukraine doesn't want peace, Trump. Washington will cease all assistance to Kiev if the latter fails to demonstrate its commitment to reaching peace with Moscow, Trump has said. He also stated Russia's been more cooperative than Ukraine. That pissed off the neocons so bad. When it comes to a potential settlement, I have to know that they want to settle the conflict, Trump said. Now, you notice interesting, he didn't say a ceasefire. He said they want to settle the conflict. That's very specific. Everybody's talking about ceasefire, right? He told journalists today, in response to a question about U.S. military aid to Kiev, the president said he did not currently know if Kiev is truly committed to peace. If they don't want to settle, we're out of there because we want them to settle. That's different than this discussion of some kind of a ceasefire, which we already know that the Russians will never take, and which, like Macron said something about a 30-day ceasefire, and then a green janitor boy runs up, yes, they're ready to do a 30-day ceasefire, that, which they knew the Russians wouldn't take. Trump's now, he ain't doing that. He's saying if they're willing to settle, if they don't want peace, what Alexander McCurry said 2 months ago, before he was even in, he's like, I think the Trump people will either try to get a deal, and if they can't, they'll walk away. And that's what Trump said. Literally, if they don't want to settle, we're out of there. And I've had that feeling for a while that might be his move. What do you think about that whole thing?
Yeah, because, invariably, at some point, whatever Trump does, someone is going to have to sign on the dotted line for Ukraine saying, yes, I agree to end this conflict. Russia has said on more than one occasion, it is not want a ceasefire. It's not stopping. Either we settle this and we call it a day, or we just keep going up until the point where the Ukrainian military fundamentally collapses on the battlefield. So one or two things is true. Either Trump is going to have somebody in Ukraine that they can work with that's legit. Zelensky is not legit.
No.
And, I say that because, for one, they've gotten rid of all opposition political parties. They've gotten rid of all opposition media. Zelensky has blown off elections. Their elections were supposed to be a year ago. and he is still in charge. And the last thing you want is somebody signing on the dotted line, and then 2 years later, the new legitimate president comes in and says, that guy wasn't legit, so I don't have to follow anything in any contract that guy signed up to. So either Trump has somebody that needs work with internally in Ukraine that is a legitimate person who can sign on the dotted line, or he has to leave it. Because what else can you do? Like, you can browbeat, you can push, you can allow them to fall on the battlefield, but you still ultimately need somebody to sign and says, yes, we're ending the conflict. Because from America's point of view, we are not technically party to the conflict. So that's my take. I mean, I agree with you. At some point, they're going to collapse. And I guess the question is, I think part of the reason he's pushing so hard for them to sign the deal now is because he knows that they're collapsing. They can't keep this up for much longer. And the last thing that he wants, if they collapse on the battlefield, all chips are gone. There is nothing that Ukraine can do. Hell, that's nothing US can do in that context. All of the chips will be extinguished. At least that's what I see.
Yeah, and here's the thing. If Trump gets a deal, I mean, he gets to brag. You know what I mean? He gets to brag, right? Hey, look what I did. I came in and I said I didn't, and I didn't. So he, there's something, like I always say, everybody's looking at the situation, WIIFM, what's in it for me? Well, what's in it for Trump? If he gets a deal, he can go around and brag and say, well, I didn't have to walk away. I did it. I got it done. And I know he wants to do that because that's what he said he'd do. In a way, if he walks away, it's not, he wants to walk away and say it's not a loss. Now, here's the reality. It is a massive loss. You know what I mean? It is. It's a massive defeat. I mean, the US came in there and dragged Europe into this thing and set up this gigantic proxy army, right? And did full spectrum diplomatic, economic, every kind of attack you could think on Russia. And Russia kicked their ass and sent them home. I mean, let's be honest about it. They got they went to Russia's border. They were defeated. Trump wants to redefine that defeat as something else, as a victory. Well, we got money, we got something back. Oh, that was just Biden. He wants to and I don't blame him. I said when he came in, my position was his only real game is to blame Biden and walk away. Okay, look, we want peace. We don't really care if he blames Biden or not, walks away. It is what it is. The other part of it, I think, is, and this is important, you get your comments on this, the EU, for this reason. So the EU is saying, we'll fight on, and, even if America walks away, we'll fight on and we'll defeat Russia. Well, wait a minute. Let me see if I get this straight. You had maybe, the most powerful, now militarily, I think we got to call them at minimum the second most powerful, maybe third with China. But let's just say this. There's 3 superpowers in this world, and then the rest of them the rest of them aren't part of the conversation, right? China, Russia, and the United States. Those are the 3 world powers. Nobody else pretends you're part of the conversation because you're not, right? With the help of one of the other superpowers, you couldn't defeat them. You're not going to be able to defeat him if it walks away. You know what I mean? You couldn't defeat him with the U.S. Let's not pretend you can still fight on and defeat him if the U.S. walks away. So they're doing everything they can to hold on. They can't, here's something I thought of. The U.S. in a way can get away with this for this reason, because we completely changed administrations. So the new administration can come in and say, I'm completely different from those people. We're completely going in a different direction. They were lunatics. Yep. We're doing everything different. The administrations that have been changing in Europe have been pretty much the same. So they can't say we're going to do a 180. They can't really say that because they have ideological continuity. So there's nobody for them to blame on it because they agree with the guy before. He can do that because he doesn't agree with the guy before. Your thoughts on the EU and
you're 1,000%
perplexing situation they find themselves in?
Oh, you're 1,000% correct. I mean, because if you think about it, is there any situation that Joe Biden could have walked this back? Like, they've called Putin everything but a child of God, right? They've said he's the devil, or look into his eyes, he was a killer. All of this other stuff. He's trying to take over all of Europe. He, give him an inch, he'll take him out. You can't trust him for anything. How do you then turn around and say, okay, now we're going to walk this back and we're going to negotiate and you can't. It's off the table. You've gone so far in that direction that there is literally no way that you can tack back with the language that you've effectively used, right? So the only way Trump does it is Trump says, I'm going to end the war. That was his campaign pledge. I'm going to end the war. The ideological position that he took on this is, I'm going to end it. So when he gets in, he has every power in the world to end it because the American public told him, go end it. That this is the thing to which you litigated during the election. Okay, he's a new administration. He has no ties at all to the previous administration. I mean, for God's sake, he's called them idiots, stupid, incompetent. Like he's called them everything, you know, he's bashed them completely. In Europe, that's not the case. Macron is still in power. Starmer is still in power. Well, Schultz is out of power, but the new, what is it, Merz, whatever his name is, he's in power. He is also going to continue in a particular direction. These governments have damaged themselves significantly in order to back the position of the United States in regards to the war. They've cut off Russian energy. They passed all of these sanctions, and they have been, it's been to their detriment. Even the money that they've been putting out, hundreds of billions of dollars. And this is them putting out all of this money while their own governments are already under economic stress and in debt. And so it's like your public knows that you've damaged them. They're aware that they're damaged as a result of this war. How do you back up from that? Like there's no room. It's you've staked the position out so far that how do you tack back after saying that Russia's trying to take over all of Europe? How do you do that? You know, you're absolutely right. You're 1,000% correct.
Well, there's something else too. I think that there's a setup going on right now with the Trump team. They're supposed to meet with Ukraine on March 11th in Riyadh, right? Okay.
Yep.
And Trump said, hey, if they don't want to settle, now before he says, you know, if they don't want peace, he was, you know, ceasefire or something. He's real clear. If they don't want to settle this thing, they don't want to end this thing, we're out. We're done. We're finished. Right. Okay. I think that
losers.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think that the setup is this. They're going to go in there. They already know. If we know what the Ukrainians are going to say, I suspect they know. I'll put it like this. Don't you think they got everything that in Kiev, every corner store, every fire hydrant, everything is bugged. Every line of coke that Zelensky snorts, they got a camera counting the lines, right? They know everything. So they already know what they're going to say. They're listening to it while they plan. You're going to say this. I'm going to say they're sitting there listening. They got cameras. They got spies in the room. You know what I mean? There is nothing, not a grain of dust moves anywhere near Zelensky that the CIA ain't listening to it, right? So they already know what's going to happen. I think this is the setup. I think he's saying now basically this. If they don't settle, we're going to, they already know. They go in March 11th. He's already said, hey, let's see what we'd need to do to drop these sanctions anyway. They go in March 11th. Kiev says, you know, we can't exactly settle on the terms you want. All right, well, have a nice day. See you later. They leave and he announces, we're out. We're dropping all sanctions. We're done. We're done. Yep, that's it. That's why, if you think about it, here it is. A week and this was like maybe Monday or something where we heard that he assigned people to look into how you would drop all the sanctions. So go to the Treasury, right? So now he's setting himself up. Next thing you know, they say we're meeting March 11th. I think there was a plan. You know, let's face it. He's sitting there with his inner circle. They don't just operate hand to mouth. They don't go like, well, let's do this and see what happens. They're going to come up with a plan. And so there's a plan here. I think the plan is, okay. Let me add something to this plan. Elon Musk is putting out these videos at first showing that they're grabbing people, beating them up, throwing them in vans, and dragging them to the front line, and talking about that. So they're getting out there. So the MAGA people are like, hey, this is terrible. Yeah. Elon Musk then starts releasing all of these videos and tweeting all these videos that says, Chris Murphy, did you see that? Chris Murphy's admitting that we were that the Maidan coup couldn't have happened with us. So they're showing that this is a bad situation. They're beating up their people. It's basically a giant prison camp that masquerading as a country. Oh, we were the ones that overthrew the government. See, all these things are setting up, priming it. So what happens? By the time March 11th gets here, the whole MAGA world and everybody who voted or supported Trump or supports peace are saying, yeah, man, they're doing bad things and we were involved in it. We need to get out of here anyway. So they set it up so that by the time March 11th gets here, everybody's primed for it. Asking them, what are you still doing there, Trump? Why are we still in there anyway with these crazy people? Let's get out of there. He walks in, they say no, adios. We're dropping the sanctions, which screws Europe to the wall when we drop the sanctions. We're dropping the sanctions and Europe, have a nice day. I'm sure you guys are going to confront the Russians. No doubt you'll win, but we'll be over here. But don't bomb the Russians because we're going to be in there doing business deals with them. Have a nice day. Right. Anyway, your thoughts on my thing that this is setting up for something for March 11th. It's not just a meeting. Go ahead.
Well, I don't think it's just MAGA. I think it's America in general. I mean, like, CNN had a recent poll where they asked people whether or not they thought Russia was an enemy. And the numbers flipped on its head. What's wild about that is if you remember with Obama and gay marriage, where when Obama, they asked African Americans, what's their take? And initially African Americans was against gay marriage. Then after Joe Biden pointed out that Obama was for it, all of a sudden, almost overnight, African Americans were like, oh, well, gay marriage, we're always for it. It's no issue. Right. This is fantastic. I'd be gay myself if I could, It was like immediately, just overnight, it flipped. It looks like Donald Trump also has that capability in regards to moving the needle in a particular direction. It says America, who said Russia's an enemy, asked if Russia's an enemy, unfriendly, or an ally. 64% in 2023 apparently said they were an enemy. Now 34%. That number flipped on its head. And so when they're putting this stuff out, there's messaging that is coming out of Trump that is sophisticated, that is coherent, that regardless of what Trump, he may be over the place, but for the most part, the messaging that's coming out of the administration is consistent. Witkoff, Kellogg, Rubio, Gabbard, RFK, even Lindsey Graham, of all people, like all of these people have effectively toed Donald Trump's line on this issue. And as he has been more brutal towards Zelensky, so have they.
Yeah.
And it seems like it is impacting the way the American public is looking at this particular issue. And so I agree with you. I do think, look, Trump has already said Russia's not going to take a ceasefire. So a ceasefire is not really something that they can really get. So they're going to have to settle the conflict. One of the things my guest pointed out today was that Trump needs somebody on the inside. And maybe this meeting, because my first question was, why the hell is he meeting Ukraine? Like, isn't that weird? Like, is it just me?
Yeah.
Like, it's very strange. Like, we are in communication with Ukraine constantly. Ukraine is the country we've been getting all of the weapons, the money, and all of this other stuff too. Joe Biden has been arm in arm with Ukraine all the way through. He could pick up the phone and talk to Zelensky. Zelensky is the ruler of that country. Why do you need a summit with Ukraine? That's super bizarre. Now, I guess the first question is, Zelensky is not going to be at that summit. That's going to be some kind of representative, probably Yermak or something. And is this a dress rehearsal to try to find somebody who is willing to play ball other than Zelensky? Now, they've already pointed out that Trump has been in back channel communications with various people in Ukraine, but those people are nuts. Timoshenko, Poroshenko, those people are lunatics. And so...
but the one, Timoshenko, I'll say this. She has a history of being friendly with the Russians, of getting deals with the Russians. But as you know, in Ukraine, that can get you killed.
Yes.
That's the only problem. That can get you killed in Kiev.
Yeah, and that was the belief that with Zelensky, right? That if Zelensky take a tack that's different than the tack he's taking now, he will find himself in a grave. I don't know how that's going to work. I just thought this conference was bizarre. I did not understand why they were effectively having this conference. The other thought was, okay, are they having this conference because it's like, okay, Zelensky, we had our conference with the Russians, and so we'll have a conference with you to make you feel better too. Oh, aren't you? Aren't you nice? Aren't you? Oh, aren't you so excited? Aren't you excited? Like, is it that this is just we did it with the Russians, so now we need to make them feel better and placate them, so we'll have one with you too? I don't get it. I got to be honest, I don't get this. And maybe this is a dress rehearsal. They're trying to find somebody. Maybe we can find somebody to play ball. And if you hear the communique at the end of it, what is that communique going to say? We found agreement. Because the agreement would be we're trying to end the war. What's the agreement?
Well, I'll say this: knowing how the intelligence works, before the people who are going to be that they're going to be negotiating with or talking with, I will guarantee you this: everything they've done, every phone they got, every email they have, every text they sent has been bugged.
Yes.
Right. So they know each one of those. And they've had teams do psychological profiles on every one of them. And they've searched their history, every telegram, you know what I mean, post that they've made, everything. Right. So they have had teams assigned to every one of those people. They know what day they were born. They know what their parents were like. They know how they developed their ideology. You know what I mean? That's the way they do it. That's the way they do it. So if they got 3 or 4 people, they know their favorite food. You know what I mean? So there's not going to be any guesswork when they get there as to whether or not they can work with somebody. They know every email. They know all of the emails that they passed and the discussions that they had the rooms bugged. So the preparation that they've done to meet, they know what they're going to say, how they're going to say it. And they could predict it based on psychological profiles that they have on every one of them, right? What their weaknesses are, what their insecurities are, what their trigger words are. They go to that point. So everybody that walks in that room, they know who they are, and they can predict the positions that they will take based on everything when they walk in the room. There ain't no guesswork there. They're not looking for someone to be that, to do what. That's how intricate and detailed they do with these psychological profiles and all for these people. They do that with everybody they're going to meet or negotiate with, right? Okay, so they got a pretty good idea of what they're dealing with, right? That's why I say their plan doesn't have to do with these people. The plan is we're going to do something, and these guys are. What about this? What about this? If I'm planning on walking away, if I'm planning on saying I'm walking away and I'm going to, this is what I think. If I'm planning on announcing to America, we did everything we could. We're walking away. We're dropping the sanctions. We're going to work with Russia and we're going to do deals. We're going to open it back up. Businesses who want to apply to go back and do deals with Russia, invest, whatever, you're free to do it. The bank, everything's going to be dropped. We're done, right? Before I do that, don't I be able to have to say, we sat down and we talked with the Russians to see what they would do. We sat down and we talked to Ukrainians to see what they would do. You have to do that before you walk, even though you know what at both parties they stand. The Russians have made it clear where they stand. They didn't really have to meet with the Russians for what they need. The Russians literally gave them a document in December of 2021. Here, this is what we want. They've known for years. Okay. But I think this is, before I do it, I got to be able to say, I talked with these guys, to the American people. I talked to these guys. I couldn't get a deal, man. I think they wouldn't listen. No, they wouldn't. I couldn't work it out. We got to do what we got to do. We've thrown away. I'm not putting good money for bad. We're done. That's the way don't you think you got to meet with both? If you're going to make a decision, you got to be able to say that.
No, that makes sense. That's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah, I guess I didn't think of it that way. That's a good point. I guess I kept looking at it from the standpoint of, we talk to Ukraine constantly. Like it's, anytime Zelensky wants to come to the White House, he shows up at the White House. But you're right. This is a different administration, and they haven't necessarily had the same relationship. So even if it's purely for this kind of political effect, yeah, I guess you would do that. I mean, and look, you could be right. I mean, it could be one of those things of, okay, we know who we're going to get. We know what we can get out of these people when we meet, if we can get anything out of these people. And maybe if we can get something out of them, we will. If we can't, we won't. Like, it really could boil down to something like that. And I suspect Trump is just going to say, I'm blame Joe Biden. I
Yeah,
blame Biden.
yeah. That's
I
it.
blame Biden.
His people will love it. They'll be, by then, right now, if you look on Twitter, a lot of the Trump supporters are screaming at the top of their lungs. Why are we still dealing with these people? They're
Yep.
like, hey, there are videos of all these memes of Trump beating up. Literally, have you seen the meme in the AI videos? He's beating up Zelensky. He's throwing him in the trash. He's kicking him into one of them. I saw they threw him into a recycle bin. There's like recycle bins. He's throwing them in a recycle bin. And it says, oh, what does it say on it? It says something like useful idiot, and he's throwing it, or useless idiot, and he throws it in a recycle bin. So now let's get to Europe.
Too funny.
Heaven knows, let's get to Europe. I got a meme up that I put up, and it was literally a picture of. Let me show you, because this is a good one. Mm-hmm. Hold on. Okay, you gotta see this. You gotta see this. So here's a meme I'm going to put up, and it's about the Europeans. Why is it when World War III happens, it's always you three? France, yep. You know what I mean? When World War happens, it's France, Germany. You guys, can't we have a peaceful planet without you stupid sons of bitches starting world wars every 40, 50 years? We can't,
I told you what I told my ex. I was like, dude, it's like, how are you continuously starting world war? Like, it's like every world war has been started in Europe. You've started two, and now you're pissing up the tree in order to start a third. It's like, come on, what are you doing?
Well, I know you and her had some ideological differences. What was her position? Is she like? Does she feel like Russia's the evil, blah, all that stuff?
She's European, and so it's like they are. I don't think she thinks Russia is evil, but I think she thinks Russia is at fault. Okay, and as I pointed out to her, I'm like, dude, you guys blew off. As I point out to her, it's like, you need to explain how you overthrow a government in 2014 and not expect consequences from doing that. And, or how is Putin at fault when he put it, the Minsk agreements 1 and 2, where he was trying to do the Istanbul agreements? I can show you conversations coming out of Ukrainians who point out that Russia was serious about trying to get an agreement, and that the NATO powers pushed to the border of Russia, not the other way around. And she gives this kind of Pierce Morgan yada yada answer to it. And it's like, well, you can't yada yada that away. That's just true. What would you do? What would the United States do? The United States would end the world. My value set comes from the United States. So when I'm looking at and think, okay, what's fair? How would we respond? We would respond and would have responded far sooner than what Russia responded in regards to that civil war. And then when you point out the Burns memo, where back in 2008, Burns is like, we're going to provoke a civil war. And we provoked a civil war. Like
a Mearsheimer. Mearsheimer. So many people said, if you do X, Y will happen.
Yes.
We did X, Y happened, and now we're like, we can't believe Y happened. It shouldn't have happened. That's evil.
I can't believe Russia win it. It's like, why can't you believe Russia win it?
They told you they go in. They said, we'll do it. If you do this, we'll do this.
And we would have done the same thing. That's the part. I mean, in the Cuban Missile Crisis, we were willing to end the world in order to maintain the integrity of the United States. Why on earth, with the situation being reversed now, are we all of a sudden oblivious to that fact? It's just hypocritical.
Yeah, let me ask you this. Let's start with Germany. I'm sure you've seen that, whatchamacallit, where during NATO exercises, the Germans were literally fighting, had broomsticks painted black because they didn't have guns and all that stuff. And they didn't have armored personnel carriers, so they used Mercedes-Benz Sprinter vans, and they just said, okay, that's, like when little kids and like they're playing cops and robbers and they don't have guns, so they pick up a stick. Okay, this is a gun. You know what I mean? They literally did that, right?
But we used to sword fight with sticks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we did that when we were kids. Take a broomstick or something. I got you. Whatever, right? Okay, great. And Mertz is talking, how do you talk as though you have the ability to, quote, stand up to Russia, to fight Russia? They talk as though they have the ability to do it. And they're having a conversation like they're realistic, competent people. Well, we'll do this. And then they say, and we'll come up with 800 and some billion. You're going broke. You don't have any money. You don't have anything to fight with. You know what I mean? I remember this guy I knew when I was growing up, and you know the type, let's be honest, back in the day, we just call him a shit talker. The kind of person, like I had a buddy and he worked on cars, right? And every time he's, yeah, man, let me tell you something, man, Garland, I'm getting ready to open a shop. Me and my buddy going to open a shop, man, and we're going to fix cars. And I'm like thinking to myself, he's a good mechanic. He ain't opening no shop. But every time you saw him, this big talk of what we're going to open a shop and we're going to do this. I'm going to get this kind of car. He always had big talk about what he was doing, but you just knew he wasn't really good. He had a beer in his head. Yeah, man, let me tell you, you know, and you're like, yeah. And he was a cool guy. You just knew he was a shit talker, right? And that's all we got now. I'm going to open a shop. That's Mertz. That's France. I'm going to put my nuclear umbrella under nuclear umbrella. Dude, look at what Russia has. They got more nukes than we do. You got effectively a broomstick. When it comes to nukes against Russia, effectively you have a sharpened broomstick. And they're like, I may have to put the entire French nuclear umbrella over Europe. Yeah, that ain't going to amount them up. Yeah. Are they going to get to a point where if Trump says, I'm out of here, that they're just going to go, crap, I guess the cat's out of the bag, I guess. Are they going to get to that point? And do you think Trump, when he does that, is going to have to stomp them? Do you think when Trump does that, he's going to have to say, guys, turn down the volume or I'm putting 50% tariffs on you, and that's going to shut down all your economies. Oh, and by the way, no more LNG. You're getting most of your LNG. You're getting a lot of it from us now. Not one drip. I will turn the ships around and I'll put 50% tariffs on everything, and no European cars, not Mercedes, not Land Rover, nothing. I will put 100% tariffs on them, so none of them will sell. Either you acquiesce or I'm going to drive your economies. And how long will that happen? Your stock markets will crash overnight. So you make a decision. You got 1 minute.
Their economy is already trash. I mean, like, let's be very honest. Like the Russian economy, with everything that they did to it, it moved up to like the number 5th spot in the economy list.
I think it's 4 now. I think it's 4 now.
4. Yeah. Ahead of Japan, ahead of Germany. Germany, its economy took a massive hit. I mean, like, it's hard to get across how Europe has been deindustrializing itself. The moment that the price of energy goes up, the price of everything goes up. If you are doing toilet paper, it costs energy to do it. It costs energy to transport it. Everything gets more expensive. Europe, energy is already expensive in Europe. And so companies that used to be able to operate under this kind of margin associated with this kind of consistent product, now all of a sudden is paying 5 times more, and they can't afford to pay 5 times more. And so the European economies were already taking a hit. So this idea that they're going to come up with $680 billion, good luck with that. Good luck with that. Where are you getting it from? Which government is going to put it in? They couldn't even put in the percentage that they were supposed to put in for NATO. How are you getting all of a sudden 680 billion euros? You're just conjuring that money from where? And then are those countries really going to be willing to destroy their welfare state in order to do that? Maybe. I'm skeptical that that's going to effectively take place. The German economy went belly up as a direct result of the money that they were effectively putting out for Ukraine. France is already, I'm not going to call them bankrupt, but let's be honest, all of these countries are in debt. And so I don't know how they're going to pull this rearmament off. Also, if you remember, Russia was outproducing 10-1 in regards to equipment, hardware, bullets, missiles, artillery, etc., over all of Europe. So even with that, how do you, like, you're talking about something that's going to take decades in order to even try to cobble your way in a direction of trying to compete as a peer competitor in the space. This is not something you can do overnight. Ursula von der Leyen, in the speech that she recently gave, when she made that 680 billion euro pronouncement, at the very end of that statement, she says, and give the weapons over to Ukraine. And I've thought to myself, okay, you're an idiot. Dude, like, you're talking about a rebuilding plan that's going to take 10 to 15 years, and you're still acting as if the Ukraine war is still going to be going on 10 to 15 years. These guys are on their last legs now. It makes no sense. And then agreed with Macron. This war speech that Macron gave, the French loses every war that they're in. It's one thing if they're fighting an African colony, and even then, it may be an even thing. You're talking about peer competitors where Russia, China, the US, they don't match. They're not a modern military in the sense of the way that you think of the main modern militaries in regards to the superpowers. They're third-rate military, just like Britain is a third-rate military. All of these are third-rate militaries. None of these guys can fight the Russians in real terms, which is the reason why they've been begging the US to be a backstop. If they could avoid the US being a backstop, they would have avoided the US being a backstop. They can't. They'd lose, and they know it. And so I don't get this tough talk. I mean, the woman from Estonia, like the mighty Estonian military, like people are terrified of the mighty Estonian military, the three of them and a dinghy that they basically have as their military. Nobody is afraid of these guys. Again, short of, an African, Timbuktu may be terrified of France. Nobody else is. Nobody else is.
Look, the African colonies kicked French out.
Yes.
And the French had to leave. They couldn't fight them. They're like, hey, little poor African countries that they're only poor because they've been robbed by now they got gold and uranium. They'll probably do okay. But they told the French, you got to go. And the French had to go. They couldn't fight.
He left. Chad,
whatever you got ran out by Chad. Yep. You couldn't stand up to the Chad military, And if you remember, like the three countries all together said, was it Mali, Chad, and Burkina Faso? And they said, and the French were like, well, we're going to take military action. And they said, well, if you do, we'll all fight together. And
actually, it was Niger.
It was Niger. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. It wasn't Burkina Faso also. Yeah. And they're like, well, we'll all fight together. And the French were like, crap, I guess we'll have to leave. We can't fight all three of them together. They got nothing. And they've been demilitarized. The other part of it is I think, is it the UK has either 40 or 60 tanks? Oh, no, or what is it? Germany has 40 or 60 tanks left. They've sent everything to Ukraine. Yes. And it's all been blown to smithereens. What little they had. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, that's the other thing. Donald Trump came out recently and said, hey, countries who are not paying their way in NATO, maybe we don't defend you if anything pop off. And maybe we even change our defensive arrangements in Europe, depending upon the states that effectively pay the whatever percentage that he wants them to pay for NATO. And when you said that, it brought to mind this notion. It comes across as if, look, I know that the US was using NATO as a power projection device in Europe. By the same token, though, it looks like Trump may be slightly annoyed by what seems as if they're entirely just dependent upon us. Like, we put a certain amount of money into NATO, we put the equipment, we have the military, we have all that stuff into it. And none of these states don't really contribute. And what I mean by that is, it's like if there was a military campaign, if there was anything that popped off, the US military is the military that's expected effectively to carry out the fight, not the other ones. The other ones are purely ancillary at most. It is us that is expected to be this kind of backstop, the man on the wall. You can imagine that sucks if you think about it. Like it feels like this is not an equal exchange. This is you lumping into the military organization just because you want to be under the umbrella of America, where you really can't contribute in equal terms in the way that America has contributed with the military force, which is on some reason, I suspect, why he's browbeating them about the money.
And you got to add this. And I mean, granted, notwithstanding the reality that we dragged them into all this crap and used them, fair enough. But we are where we are right now. You know what I mean? We are where we are right now. We're sitting on a reality today. And it's exactly what you said. And not only are they saying if something popped off, the US has to fight it, all of their stuff is gone. I mean, they don't have anything to contribute to a fight. Zero. They've given up. Now, granted, we did it to them. We told them, give all your stuff to Ukraine, and they gave everything to Ukraine, and the Russians blew it all up. For the last couple of years, I've been saying Ukraine is a giant trash can compactor, and NATO just fills the trash compactor, and Russia empties it. filled it again, Russia empties it, right? That's the way it went. Okay, it is what it is. We did it to them. But where we are today is this. If the fight pops off, they would have nothing contribute. We'd have to fight the whole fight. They like some of those countries have like 40 tanks. I don't know. Germany tried to put like a couple of tank brigades on the Russian border. Remember that a couple months ago? We reported on it, and they were like, but we don't have any tanks right now, maybe by 2027. So they put tank brigades on the Russian border, but it's going to take a minimum of 3 years before they actually have tanks. They ain't tank brigades. They're just a bunch of Russian schnitzel eating, beer drinking guys waiting for tanks. That's what we are. We're as much of a tank brigade as they are because we got just as many tanks as they do. So effectively, they put what would one day end like. So bottom line, we'd have to do everything, and legitimately, like I said, even though we set it up, we're looking at them saying, "You're of no value to us anymore. You ain't nothing."
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I hate to say it, it's like the pimp saying to the hooker, "You're getting old. The bloom is off the rose, and you're not making money anymore." You know. It's like the pimp looking at it saying, because what would happen? We could make money before they could buy stuff from us. They bought all of these weapons. They ain't got no money to buy weapons anymore. Of what value are they to the U.S.? The U.S. used them up, used them to throw all of their stuff into the Ukraine. That all got blew up. And now that we're done with them, just like Zelensky, just like the rest of the puppets that we have all over the world, Europe gets the same treatment. We're done with them. We got no use for them. They can't buy stuff from us. There's nothing they can do to benefit us. And then we looked over at Russia. The economy's fourth, and they got all kind of stuff. We're like, well, Russia's looking kind of pretty now, aren't they? Now that we're done with you, we're looking at Russia. They got money. They got resources. The world loves them. They got diplomatic power. Oh, boy, we're dropping them. And we're going to date Russia now. You know what I mean? We're dropping the old trophy wife. She's gotten a little old. She's gotten in her 40s, gained a few pounds, what have you. We're going to drop that wife, and we're going to go get the young blonde 22-year-old with, skinny a trophy wife. That's Russia now. And that's what it's a sad state of affairs. But just like Zelensky, the Europeans put themselves in this position. They went along with us all these years. Every time we said, we're going to sanction Maduro, gold. We're going to sanction Maduro. And what's Britain say? We'll take their gold. We recognize Juan Guaido. Every evil machination that the U.S. empire around the world, the European countries were right there to join along. And now the chickens have come home to roost. And they made a Faustian deal. They made a deal with the U.S. empire. They made a deal with the devil. And now the devil has come for their soul.
It was come for their soul. It's like, Russia, you got a big booty over there on you.
Yeah. The Wishmaster, where the guy was like an evil demon, and he'd walk around and he'd ask you, what do you want of war? And he'd grant you any wish. But sooner or later, they made a deal with a demon. That U.S. empire was an evil bastard, stealing stuff all over the world. And they thought they could join in and they could get a little piece of that. Yeah, you could. At some point, it runs out of stuff and it looks at you and say, well, now I'll take yours. And I'm finished with you. Adios.
Yeah,
the evil Hitler guy, Putin. Yeah, we're rocking with him now.
They thought that they can remain masters of the world by lumping in with the United States. It's almost like the white world, the 14-15%, where they can remain in charge because they're lumping in with the United States. And fair enough, that worked for a while. I mean, when you want to take down Libya, fair enough. If you want to go after Iraq, again, fair enough. But like you pointed out, at a certain point, the U.S. thinks to itself, all right, we've had, 70 years of NATO? And within 3 years, all the equipment was blown to hell. And so what is the point of Europe in this situation where within 3 years, all of this stuff is 20 different countries versus one, and they lose? Yeah, I would imagine, if Trump is looking at this, he's thinking to himself, okay, what is the point of this? This is not a military thing. Europe needs to be able to take care of itself. Why are we doing this? We have other concerns around the globe. We're looking at China, for example, as one of the main concerns. No, and blew up their pipelines on top. So they're now buying more in oil or gas, LNG, I suppose, from us than what they were buying before at a much higher markup. This has not been Europe's betterment. I mean, it's been to their detriment, big time.
That's the one too. the U.S. blew up their damn pipeline. I mean, a big part of the reason they're impoverished. Like, I'll never forget. I reported on like Monday. It's like over the weekend, there were protests in Germany and they were holding up signs that said, reopen Nord Stream 2. And like Wednesday, boom, they blew it to hell, right? And like Biden like brings in, you know, Schultz and, you know, just and literally Schultz comes here and it was almost like they got together to work together to cook up some bullshit excuse, you know, and Schultz leaves and he's like, yes, it was probably the Russians or maybe whatever he was told. They blew up your pipeline and you went along with it.
It's so pathetic.
You went along with it. And I'm supposed to feel sorry for you. I think that the real deal is the European ruling elite are afraid they'll get Luigi'd. They're afraid that the people will wake up one day and cut their damn heads off, and they should be. Just think if Trump says, I need you to go along with me, and they say no, and he says, well, if you don't, I'm going to trash your economy. And let's face it, I have the wherewithal to do it like that. If I stop delivering LNG tomorrow, just saying that, and I say no more cars, no more this, no more that, 100% tariffs, those things aren't coming. Just that. If I say that tonight, when you wake up tomorrow and you look at the stocks for all your companies in Europe, you'll have a bagel. Zero. They will crash. I can crash your economies overnight, and if you don't, I'll do it. And the Europeans, after all of that, their leaders, if they wake up and their economies crash tomorrow, it's French Revolution time.
Oh man,
don't you think?
You think they'd be dragging cows into the middle of the highway now? What the hell is going to happen the day after that? It's fascinating. I mean, because you're right. I mean, Trump is already talking about putting tariffs on European economy, and he's still saying that he's going to do it. And I remember I was reading the article in Bloomberg. They were pointing out that he has the capacity to knock their economy down by like 2% or their GDP by like 2%. That is a significant amount. I mean, like that's the difference between being in a recession versus potentially surplus. And so he can do it. I mean, but I got to be honest, I don't really feel sorry for Europe. Europe has allowed itself to be put into this kind of vassal spot where they just lumped in with pretty much any and everything that the United States did regarding foreign policy. And, you know, even when it wasn't in the best interest of their populations, they went along with it. They came up with narratives in order to lie to their populations to justify the policies that they were effectively enacting. And they were screwing over their populations. Like the notion that Germany, when Angela Merkel was in power, she fought tooth and nail in order to maintain Nord Stream 2. Schultz stood beside Joe Biden when Joe Biden openly stated, I will end that pipeline if Russia goes in. And the reporter, shocked by this, in fact, the reporter was more shocked than Schultz was shocked. And she was like, how are you going to do that? That's not your pipeline. Like, you didn't build that. That's not part of American architecture. What the hell are you talking about that you're going to stop the pipeline? Joe Biden said, we'll do it. They turned to Schultz. What do you have to say about this? And Schultz gives a mealy-mouth answer. The president of the United States just said he was going to blow up a massive act of terrorism against your property because it was a Russia, Germany, European project. And they allowed that. That's my point. Like, this is not something that a leader of a particular country that has a legal, ethical, even just a spine, a backbone would allow. And yet, the gang of European idiots in Europe allowed it. So my sympathy goes to the population, not to these leaders. They earn.
Yeah, I think these leaders know they're at the end of their rope. There's no way. They've put themselves out so far. They bet everything on we got to defeat Russia. Why they ever thought that would work? I think ultimately they thought we can drag the United States in and go to war, but they didn't think that through because that would end in a nuclear annihilation. But let's face it, based on the history of the ruling elite in Europe, they were ready for another world war, even if it killed everybody. They just don't. They've never seemed to be rational. Now I understand why they had 2 world wars, because the ruling elite in those countries are lunatics. Absolute lunatics, and should never be entrusted with power again. And I don't suspect that they will. That I think one of the things that the Trump team is doing is to recreate themselves throughout Europe in their own image, and not just them. But here's the thing: what happened, I think, is the neoliberal neocons in the U.S. did that. They so interfered in European politics and elections that you ended up with just neoliberals all the way down. No matter who you vote, that's what you get. These same kind of clowns. And because they do, and they wiped out the left. Remember the whole thing with Corbyn. They destroyed any semblance of a left. Not that he was far, but any semblance of a left or populist left, they wiped it out and they left the only option. As a result, since there's no populist left option, the people are going to do a populist right option. And the same exact politics that happened here is going to happen in Europe. Now, as you and I know, economically, it ain't going to work out well. And they're going to end up with, some problems, just as we are economically. Yeah. That whole anarchist libertarian stuff it's a self-serving racket for the ruling elite. But I suspect that there's going to be massive there'll be political upheaval. Some of these governments will fall one way or the other. I think we're getting to the point where we're months from political upheaval in Western Europe.
I think Trump is trying to recreate Europe in his own image. I think that's why they're leveling attacks of Romania for canceling those elections, for going after Garland Nixon. I suspect that's why they've been going after them for putting pressure on Orban, or for that matter, even Fico. I mean, Fico is on the left, but Fico has been one of those people who's been doggedly anti-war, especially in regards to this war in Ukraine. Well, that's what, 1, 2, 3, that's 4 governments that we're talking about right there. Georgia, I think I said Georgia, Orban, which is Hungary, Romania, Slovakia. If you add in Marie Le Pen just came out and said Macron is out of his mind. That this notion that you're trying to take France to war is nonsense. She pretty much scuttled it right off the bat. Marie Le Pen most likely will win in 2027, regardless of what they try to do to keep her out. And even in Germany, if you're looking at the ADF, Alternative for Deutschland, ADP, I always get the ADF, Alternative for AFP. AFD, I'm sorry, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Alternative for Deutschland.
Even them, they came in second place. Okay, so the notion that this quote unquote Nazi party came in second place is astonishing. Like, that is something that is just unheard of in regards to German politics and where the public is finding themselves. Meloni, she scuttled this idea of putting European troops on the ground. Poland scuttled this idea of putting European troops on the ground. So some of these governments are batshit crazy, but even those governments that are crazy still are like, it's a bad idea to do what these European idiots are saying that they effectively want to do in regards to square off against Russia. It's weird.
So let's come back home. Trump gave his speech the other day. There's some things that he said that I thought were great. There's some things I thought that were totally goofball, but that's the nature of Trump. You understand that. The Democrats don't seem to get that they have disgraced themselves morally with Gaza. They have disgraced themselves philosophically between Russia and the fact that people get for the last 4 years that every time there was some kind of a natural disaster, Joe Biden was in Kiev drumming up more money for the Nazis, and there was never a dime for the people here, right? So they have disgraced themselves. They don't understand that they were soundly beaten. They act like they lost by 1 vote, you know, and so they're doing these performative things. You know what I mean? They're even the way they so-called fight back against Trump, right? Do they say there's some policy, blah, 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 oh, there's this policy or that? For the most part, there's some guy shaking his cane at him. Did you see this guy? And I thought, that's like the old man where like they throw their Frisbee over the fence and he shakes his cane. If this Frisbee
get off my yard
again, you're not going to give it back to you. You know what I mean? And he gives the kids his Frisbee back. An old man shaking his cane at Trump. That's what I see. Yeah, exactly. That's what I see the Democrats. And it's like, and the big thing they're pissed off at Trump is, at this latest discussion, whatever he had, State of the Union, whatever you want to call it, is because he wants to stop a war. Now, that's what really pissed him off. He wants to stop giving billions away to the Nazis in Ukraine. They have disgraced themselves, and they don't understand that they don't have a moral or intellectual founding. They're morally and intellectually bankrupt, and they don't know it.
I don't know why they don't know it, but I agree with you. I mean, Joe Biden started off his term failing in Afghanistan miserably. Later on in the term, he ends up backing a genocide where he's paying 70 to 80% of what is effectively ethnic cleansing of Gaza and even the West Bank, because Israel effectively spread to the West Bank. Joe Biden not just didn't do anything about it, continued to give them weapons as they fundamentally destroyed 80 to 90% of the living dwellings in Gaza, not to mention recklessly, flagrantly murdered women, children, babies, anything that effectively moved. And Joe Biden stood by them as they did it and defended them as they did it and ran an election, meaning with Kamala Harris being his heir apparent in this situation, also backing and not deviating one iota from what Joe Biden was doing. Wouldn't even allow a Palestinian on stage because the very act of bringing up the fact that Joe Biden was committing a genocide was an impeachment of the Democratic Party itself. The entire party defended him on that policy. For whatever reason, a genocide wasn't a red line. And now you get to a situation where they were bringing the world to the brink of a third world war. They had no backing out of it. They kept going forward. They kept escalating, even to the point of firing missiles into Russia, even to the point of backing a policy of invading Russia in the Kursk region. All of this stuff is red lines. He kept going. And so that's the party. And now when Trump says, I want to end the war, they say, oh, that's outrageous. What do you mean you're trying to end the war? What do you mean? How dare you end the war? And you even get somebody like Bernie Sanders, who I have said has lost the effing plot, out there screaming and screeching at the top of his lungs that Ukraine is a democracy, Zelensky is Winston Churchill, and Donald Trump is outrageous for trying to end the war. They've lost their minds. Like they have legit lost the plot. Like, it's one thing to say, I'm going to go after Donald Trump on the things that he's doing domestically that I think are egregious. Fair enough. I would agree with you on those things. It is another thing to say any and everything that Donald Trump does is bad by definition. And so even if he's trying to end a conflict where 1 million people have effectively been broken, killed, or for that matter, permanently disfigured and maimed, that's also bad. That's a good thing. Usually, it used to be considered a good thing. Do you think all of this is just boils down to Trump? Like that Trump is touching it, and because Trump is touching it, it is by definition a bad thing?
There's some of that with some of them, but also look, this is the party of John Bolton and Dick Cheney. This is a party that has in fact aligned itself with the neocons. So anything that Trump does that the neocons don't like, they're going to push back or against it. So that means it's a very pro-war party. And like I keep saying, you can't be the party of people unless you're the people, of the masses, of the working class, unless you're the party of peace. And they ain't the party of peace. And Trump's not the guy of peace, but in this instance, compared to them, he sure is. And here's the bad thing. He's using that rhetoric. I want peace. I'm going to bring peace. I'm going to be the peacemaker. At least he's using the rhetoric of peace. They're not using it. They're putting themselves in a bad situation. And there's another bad situation coming because Trump wants a 1 trillion, notwithstanding all of the economic things that we disagree with. Here's a reality. He's pushing for a $1 trillion tax cut for the middle class, which will include no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. That comes up to like 500 billion. And no tax on Social Security.
Right.
That's 500 billion. That's a $1 trillion tax cut, every dime of it going to the working class or the middle class, right? What are the Democrats going to do in the Senate? It's going to pass the House. The House is going to vote for it. When it gets to the Senate, what are the Democrats going to do? Trump's doing it. Are they going to stand up and say, no, no, no? After all of this, we can't support a tax cut
For the middle
for people
class.
that vote all the time. Now, I have to say this to the Democrats. You got to vote for that. You know, I would say this to any Democrat. You got to vote for that. I mean, that's a tax cut that's going to actually, and money in the hands, face it, people who work for tips spend it all. See, tax cuts for the rich, they just hoard it or buy them more stocks or whatever.
In a bank account.
Who work for tips, people who work for overtime, people, 20 million of the 40 million people on Social Security, that's the only money they got, right?
Yep.
Every dime of that money will go right into the economy. In fact, it will be something that will be economically stimulative because every dime of it will be spent by the people who make it. Right. So he puts them in a really bad situation where if they just say, we hate Trump, so we're voting against it. But meanwhile, all these people on Social Security will be going, well, I hate Trump too. But you can give me extra $300, $400, $500 or more a month. I got to take that, bruh. I got to take that. And if that passes and they see that money in their pocket, midterms, the Democrats are toast. So that, politically speaking, they're they're doing this performative stuff. They came in with the blue and yellow ties on. Did you see that? All of them had they had a blue and yellow thing, all this stuff. And if Trump ends it, Crane's done. That's over. What are you going to do? Let's say it's over. Are you going to keep going all the way to the midterms to say, no, we've got to go back and restart that war? You can't do it. It's over. We walked away. We need to restart it. Let's go back to Russia's border and fight them some more. It's over. You're not refiring that back up. They're not going back in. So how long do you ride that horse? They're in trouble. The Democratic Party is in deep and serious political trouble by their own hand.
Yeah. I mean, CNN, I've been fascinated with some of the polling CNN has been doing recently. And I think they've been shocked by their own polling results in many respects. Joe Biden had a negative 22 on the issue of Ukraine. Trump has an issue of positive 2 on that issue. That is a 24-point jump from one person or one administration to the other on the exact same issue. This is the same position of Biden, Harris, Sanders, all of the Democratic Party, meaning the American public decisively has chosen one team over the other in regards to the way they're trying to effectively end the war, whereas the other one, oddly enough, wants to keep the war going despite the fact that they have no out, meaning they are losing. They've lost. There's no capacity for Ukraine to win this conflict, and yet they still want to inflame it. On the other front, I think you're right. From my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, no tax on tips was more than $500 billion. That was trillions.
Well, I think it depends on, is it over 1 year, over 5 years, over 10? You know how they do that. I don't know, over a decade. Yeah. But this is, I've been told, Dr. Jack Rasmus said this is $1 trillion, and he went over it. Bottom line is, if that passes, it puts money in the hands of working class people today. Yeah. Now, I can argue this system of, in-stage capitalism is crashing, and all that. I can make all these arguments about all the underlying factors of our economy over the long run.
Yeah, but I'm a lefty.
Speaking.
Yeah, I want money in people's pockets today. Especially, yeah, exactly.
And that will have a political effect.
Especially the people at the bottom of the economic spectrum, which is where this hits the most. I mean, if you're a waiter and you make $2.50 an hour, and you get, let's say, $50,000 a year when you include your tips. Okay, everything over $250 is just money in your pocket that you don't have to pay taxes on. And if you're talking about a YouTuber, anytime somebody gives a super chat, anytime, hell, even Patreon might be included. That's a lot of money that is being put into this pot of tips that is, as you point out, going directly into people's pockets. What do they call it? Speed of money. As you pointed out, if you're rich, you put that money in the bank account because you don't really need any extra. All of this stuff is just excess for you. Whereas if you're poor, 120% of it gets immediately spent. And so it immediately goes back into the economy. And because it's an immediate cash fusion into the economy, you're supercharging the economy in the way that the money being spent. Mitt Romney has $250 million, but Mitt Romney is not going to buy the same amount of underwear or socks or toilet paper as 100 or 200 million people, right? He's not going to do it. So the fact that you have all of these people with all of these service jobs getting additional revenue where they can dump back into the economy, it does kick up the economy. Now, Democrats may not want to own that. I don't know how you back away from that, because it's a good policy at the very least, from the standpoint of putting money into people's pockets, especially the people who need it the most. Will it pass? I don't know. I mean, that's going to blow a hole in the deficit, even more so than what is already there.
But they don't care about that. They don't care about
Yeah,
that.
Republicans don't care. Yeah, they don't care. They don't care. I guess I'm pointing out it's from the standpoint of policy for middle class. Yeah, obviously it's good. It's good.
And the other thing is this: most middle class people will look at it like this: when's the last time we even got a crumb? Exactly. You know what I mean? And I've heard people say, they never do anything for us. We never get it. We never done anything. They never. And I think Trump understands you got to give them a crumb. And I think the ruling elite realized, man, these people are really pissed. Look at Luigi. We better hand these people the crumb. And I think Trump sees that as, if he can do that, if he can meet with Russia, get gas prices where he needs to, knock gas prices down a little, inflation, blah, blah, blah. I think he's looking for some home turf political capital that would give it to him. And the Democrats I don't think they're looking ahead. They're so caught in the day-to-day. We got to stand up against Trump today. We got to fight, against everything he says. We got to go back to Russiagate. If that goes through. Now, here's the other thing. Will it go through the Senate? I had some people say, well, all these Republicans never. You know what?
I don't know.
I didn't think Tulsi would get through. Didn't think RFJ Jr. would get through.
Look at Rubio.
Cash. I said none of these people will get through. There's no way that Tulsi, RFK Jr., and when he started throwing his elbows out, every one of them got through. And after that, I said Trump could get a ham sandwich through the Senate. Right now, it's going to go through the House when it gets to the Senate. And here's the thing. You got to guess that a handful of Democrats are going to vote for it. You think Bernie Sanders ain't going to vote for it? I think he will. You got to also say a handful of Democrats are going to look at that and say, how can I go home and look at my voters and say, I voted against you getting money in your pocket. So if they don't vote for it, when comes midterm, the Republicans are going to run ads. Senator Nixon and Senator Thomas voted against. No taxes for tips, no taxes for this, no taxes. Put a Republican in office, and this time we'll get it through. The Democrats, they're in their asses grass. They're shoved into a corner. I see no way. They got to vote for it. But if they don't vote for it, they pay a price in the midterm. If they do vote for it, Trump jumps up and says, look what I did. He puts their asses in a vice. He's got more than their asses. He puts their you-know-whats in a vice politically with this.
And by the way, in the old days, that would be a policy the Democrats would have pushed. Like that would have been their policy. That's a worker policy. That's how can we put money in the hands of workers? It's that. These days, Kamala Harris had to lump onto the policy. And who knows if she even really meant it. The thing probably would have went away the moment that she would have taken office, I suppose. But Trump put it out there. He seems to be standing by it. We'll see if it passes. But you're right. The fact Marco Rubio is a different person today. Now, I don't think he's a different person for real, but Marco Rubio got his marching orders. You're going to go up there and you're going to sell my policy, regardless of what you believe in, you're going to sell my policy. And the same thing is true with those Republicans. As you point out, they were not for Tulsi. They had as many concerns as Democrats did, but they fell in line. Same thing with RFK. They fell in line. Look at Lindsey Graham today. Lindsey Graham is like, I talked to Zelensky 9 times, but he doesn't look like a good business partner. Dropped him like a hot potato. So
he turned into Paul Wellstone. They turned Lindsey Graham into Paul Wellstone, for God's sake.
Up in smoke. So Trump has been bending people in the form. Regardless of what they want politically, they have recognized that the political gravity is with Trump. He is the guy that did what many people thought was impossible, which is win the popular vote as a Republican.
He got black votes. He got all these other votes, and they know they're right. Let's face it. They don't have the House. They don't have the Senate. They're all riding on his coattails.
Yes, they are.
No, they can't afford to get off his coattails.
Yes, they are.
And they don't want to go home. They don't want to be the one that killed Trump's policies and go home to South Carolina or wherever. And you're the guy. What's Trump's got? Probably 90% approval rating. And you're going to kill this guy's signature bill. And if Trump what happens if he comes to your district or your state and holds a rally? You're done. You're finished.
Yeah, they'll be held to pay. They'll be held to pay. And they know it, which is why they told the lie.
That's why Cash Patel, RFK Jr., and Tulsi Gabbard, there's no way they get through. But they got through, didn't they? Jamal Thomas, everybody. Yep. So just so you know, we're running this on both of our channels. So if you're on Jamal Thomas's channel and you are not a member of my channel, make sure you come over and you subscribe. If you're a member of my channel and you're not on Jamal's channel, Jamal every morning from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. has the best morning show on YouTube. I'm telling you that right now. It is the best on YouTube. I watch it every morning. You got to go subscribe to his channel, and you got to be there every morning from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. If you like my channel, if you like the kind of guests and the people I have, very, very similar kind of stuff. So make sure you check it out. Also, follow me on Rockfin and follow me on Rumble, just in case the unthinkable happens, or even if it doesn't, you might want other options. And if you can afford to, buy me a coffee, Patreon, PayPal, that kind of stuff. It's all scrolling across the bottom. Same with where can they contribute to your channel?
Oh, same thing. PayPal, Patreon, Super Chat, Super Stickers, memberships. In fact, shout out to Chili Pepper. He says Putin and Trump are fighting the same international terrorist organization, the CIA. And Laurie Rhodes, welcome to the family, Laurie Rhodes. So yeah, same.
Laurie Rhodes joined mine. Thanks, everybody. And look, when you come to our channel, is also the join button. So, and it's only $3 or $4 a month to be a member on our channel, something like that. So you can choose. Actually, it's like $3.99, $4.99, $5. It's really, really expensive, inexpensive. So if you could become a member, that'd be great. The main thing is this: share this on all your social media platforms so that other people have an opportunity to see what we're all doing here together. That's Jamal. That's me, and that's you. The people in the chat, you're the ones who have made alternative media grow. You're the ones who make it what it is. We're just running our mouths. But the fact that people have had enough of that lies and Rachel Maddow crap and all that stuff, and they're ready to listen to some people who may be right or wrong, but at least we actually believe in what we say. We're out.
Have a good one, man. Thank you.
All right.